Hey everyone, it's Seth from Voice and Exit, and today we're doing a follow-up with Aubrey Marcus, whose 2014 Seed Talk explored how we can expand our being through consciousness technologies. And Aubrey is the CEO of Onnit, which is a great company that has really incredible resources, everything from nootropic supplements, food, fitness equipment, and they're sort of a total human optimization resource. And that's what they bill themselves as, but they really follow the stride of that vision. So they're really an incredible company. And beyond that, Aubrey is just kind of a badass. You know, he's sort of a renaissance man, writer, speaker, and I'm always learning new stuff from you, whether it's on a podcast or the stuff you're writing. So always an encyclopedic conversation. So welcome, Aubrey.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Can I bring you around everywhere to make that introduction? That was great.
Absolutely.
I don't know how much of it was true or a little bit of flattery there, but I appreciate it. I'll take it all. Anything given, I'll take it.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So wanted to jump in with you with asking you kind of what human flourishing means to you. You know, you sort of, a lot of your life is about exploring and optimizing, as you say. So where do you see those kind of threads between human flourishing, human optimization? What does that mean for you in terms of your personal sort of mission?
Well, there's a spectrum of what we're capable of, and I'm a firm believer in our own free will and our ability to affect our life, to turn this life that we have into a heaven on earth or a hell on earth. And so the spectrum is dramatic. You know, on one side there's suffering, sickness, you know, really difficult states that are usually, occasionally, of course, there's situations that are externally imposed. But for the most part, we have a lot of internal control if we know the right levers, the right tools. But, you know, there's a lot of people who are suffering, and then there's a lot of people who are doing pretty good. And then there's some that are really thriving and are just beaming with that energy and enthusiasm and passion and zest and love for life and health. And, you know, that's really the goal, is to help move everybody from where they're at more towards that potential, because that's the opportunity that we have. You know, I think it's easy to get cynical about our world, but we live in the greatest time ever, truly. And anything that we want is available to us if we can master our own minds and bodies and bring that to fruition. So that's really what Onnit's about. It's about taking you from wherever you're at and advancing you to a greater fulfillment, greater passion, greater purpose.
Yeah, that's interesting. And really, I mean, that sort of transition has to start with the self, right? It's easy for us to, you know, a lot of people have imposed sort of consequences that are on them, their environment, and it's a little bit more difficult. But so what do you say for kind of in terms of self-optimization, if you're not even quite able to get a job enough to feed yourself, so you're eating this food that might not be the best, you know, for you? Where do you kind of start in terms of you know, building character and you know, starting with the self in order to get to a point where you can grow out towards, like you said, those higher kind of levels of optimizing or thriving?
Yeah. You know, I think it's difficult to say that in a blanket terms, because everybody is specific in their situation. And I think it's easy to make rationalizations for what's going on. Oh, you know, I'm just under a lot of stress right now. That's why I stopped at Krispy Kreme and got these 6 donuts, you know, and that's fine if you want to do that. But to take those rationalizations out of your life and just be aware and truthful with yourself as to what's going on, what processes are happening, and always treat yourself with forgiveness and self-love, you know, no matter what's going on. And I think that's a crucial thing. I mean, too often we're so brutal to ourselves, way meaner to ourselves than we would ever be to anybody else. You know, look at ourselves in the mirror. Oh, you're an idiot. Oh, look at this. You look terrible. And all of those things that we would never say to anybody else, we permit to say to ourselves. So first step is just an accurate assessment of where I'm at. Looking around, self-diagnostic. What's going on here? What's going on with this vehicle that I'm driving around in my body? Am I treating it well? You know, what's up with that? And being honest about that, and not in a critical way, but just an honest way. Be like, oh, well, you know, I've kind of let this slide a little bit. I haven't been taking care of this, and that's okay. But here we are now, and what are we going to do going forward? You know, there's a famous quote from Heraclitus, and it says, "No man ever steps into the same river twice, because he's not the same man and it's not the same river." So at any point, we can decide that things are different now and take a look at what we got and then go from there. Act as if you got like beamed in from some alien consciousness and you just zoop, came into your body and you're like, oh shit, look at this body. All right, what do I do now? All right, well, you know, my ankles are working. I just go through the whole body. All right, legs are up. Knees could use a little work. Maybe I need to do some myofascial on my quads. You know, like whatever information that you have available, just kind of take a look around. How's my mental state? You know, what's going on with that? So self-diagnostic, I think, you know, is the most important thing to do first.
Yeah, that's interesting. I actually was talking with John Durant, doing a follow-up with him, and we were talking a lot about experimenting. You know, wherever you're at right now, to try and experiment. Change one thing in your room in terms of the lighting, or change one thing in your diet. And start to diagnose yourself, you know, in different ways by experimenting with trying a different workout routine or something along those lines, to kind of take where you're at right now and see where you can grow positively from that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you know, when I think of optimization, you know, I think some of these words can get thrown around, and it's kind of good to come back to, you know, okay, what does optimization really mean? And, you know, when I look at it, I think of getting the most sort of use out of something. Is that sort of how you conceive of it too? Like getting the most, it's kind of like saying the most bang for your buck in a way, like pulling the most out of the human capability and exploring it, expanding on it.
Pulling the most out of the human experience, you know, I mean, what a cool opportunity we have, you know, to be in this body, have these experiences, have these choices available to us. Like, why not make the most of it? You know, when our time comes to transition, whatever your belief system entails, you know, you want to look back and say, man, I did this earth thing, you know, like I did it. And I really did it to the best of my ability. Not like, you don't want to be at the end going, man, thank God this earth fucking program is done. That was brutal, you know, like, and that's a choice that we have. For the most part, we can decide how, you know, this experience is, and why not make it the best possible. You know, if you had, it's funny, like the people who can lucid dream, which is, you know, the ability to control your dreams, you know, everybody in that dream would be like, oh yeah, I'm going to fly, I'm going to have sex, I'm going to do all of these cool things. Well, life is like a lucid dream. Like, we can decide to do that stuff too. It's challenging as well, but we have a lot more control than we give ourselves credit. Not necessarily of the external world, but the internal world. And generally, when you change your internal landscape, you're going to change your external landscape as well.
Yeah, and I like that self-diagnostic of, you know, I was just beamed here. Okay, let's do a quick check. What's going on?
Yeah, what's going on?
Where am I living? Even where am I living? You know,
yeah,
am I living in the right city? You know?
Yeah. Is that my girlfriend? Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, all right. You know, like everything, just like look at it fresh, you know, and it could be like, whoa, awesome. Or it could be like, whoa, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah.
You know, like momentum can just keep. So if you like say like brand new, like, all right, where am I at? Oh, this is awesome. Yeah. You know, I mean, hopefully that's your answer, but still you'll find things to work on and a place to go from there.
It's a good exercise, because I think, you know, we all build up our stories about, you know, why we're in, oh, I live here because of this job, or because I had this opportunity. We have all these stories that we sort of develop about why we're in this situation, and they're not necessarily the most empowering stories. So doing that, I think that's an awesome exercise, doing that self-diagnostic. I'm beaming into my body right now. Just do a quick write down what you see around you.
Yeah, totally.
And does that sort of match up with your vision of yourself for your life?
Yeah. And do it with like a curiosity. Like, huh, interesting. Interesting. You know, just as if you were on another planet, you know?
Yeah. I dig it. I like it. Okay, so yeah, when I think of, you know, if we do this diagnostic, it's kind of like a quick reality check, and moving into some of the things you talked about in your talk, psychedelic substances. We talked about consciousness technologies. You know, a few of them were not necessarily entheogenic substances, you know, the float tanks and the holotropic kind of breathwork stuff, which is, it's fascinating stuff. I've actually tried that once myself. And But moving into the substances, how do you see those sorts of substances, cannabis, psilocybin, the psychedelic substances as playing into our sort of experience here on Earth, like you said, and tying into optimizing, getting more out of what the life experience is?
There's a lot of momentum that builds up in the body, and one of the words for this momentum is the ego, or the mind, or the Toltecs call it the parasite. It's these general defense mechanisms and survival mechanisms that have developed in our brain that sometimes serve us really well, but a lot of times they're also our antagonist because they're running programs that are unnecessary. They're generating fear that we don't need. They're creating states of anxiety and stress that are detrimental to the body, detrimental to the mind, detrimental to the spirit, keeping us distracted. So what these tools are, it's a way to counteract resistance and that resistance that comes from within. And you do that by creating stillness. And that's really what all of these processes are about. Creating enough stillness, enough quiet in the mind that we're able to tap into our highest consciousness, our real potential, and then do that accurate self-diagnostic, have information come in that's new, see a different perspective, and just kind of pause the momentum for a moment. It's like calling a timeout in the game, You're sweating, you're fighting, you're competing, there's stuff going on, and then all of a sudden it's time to all right, timeout, water break, let's take a look, what's the game plan, what are we doing here, and look at things a little bit differently. And that's what all these tools provide. Some are more dramatic and others are just, a process like meditation and floating. And I'd like to use them all. These are all powerful tools. For me personally, they all work in different ways. So I'm going to utilize everything I got because I need help. For as much as I'm proud of everything I've done, I need a lot of help to get here and maintain it. And I'm willing to realize that. When I do my diagnostic, I say, this person is prone to a lot of, negative thinking and being too self-critical and getting caught up and maintaining too high a stress level. If I'm doing an accurate self-diagnostic, then I think, all right, after the diagnostic, what are the tools that can correct that? Well, this is what's worked. I know floating has worked. I know meditating has worked. I know a hard workout when I'm feeling good enough, that helps. I know getting out in nature, putting my feet in the sand somewhere, that helps. So you start plugging in all of these different tools. And of course, the big ones as well, like ayahuasca or these other ceremonies, those are just tools as well to help with that self-diagnostic. Look at what the function of that is and then apply it to your life.
Yeah, and it's funny how we sort of, especially in America, I think, have this perspective that, you need cannabis in order to explore yourself more, or you shouldn't need anything outside of yourself in order to cultivate character, I guess you could say. So
right.
What are your thoughts on that when somebody brings up that sort of line of thought?
What I always liken it to is people who, you're asking somebody, so generally these are like staunch proponents of something like meditation. Like, I don't need anything else outside. It's like, that's great. But for most people, you could tell them to meditate and they don't even know what their goal is. They don't even know what they're going for. They're just sitting in a room that smells like incense, like that. They don't know what the hell's happening. There's a story I shared in my talk, I think, I may not have shared it in this one, but I was down at an ayahuasca ceremony and there was somebody in there who'd been meditating for 30 years. And that's the only thing they'd done, 30 years of meditation. And they did an ayahuasca ceremony, and then they gave their meditation cushion, which they'd kept with them for all of this time, they gave it to the shaman. The shaman's like, no, I can't accept this. And he's like, yeah, please. Like, you showed me what I was trying to do when I was sitting on this cushion just trying not to think about sex. Like he'd never really known what he was going for, so he's trying, and it had some benefits, but the ayahuasca showed him that place, that transcendent spot that is really the goal. So even if you don't use this as something that you need all the time to get there, because I don't think it should be, at least showing where you want to go with it, I think is a really valuable piece of these medicines. Show you what your target is so you can feel it in your body and then find the other ways to get there.
Yeah, and each substance sort of has its own, like you mentioned, cannabis is good for sort of going inside of your body and really understanding how your body feels and works,
Yeah.
And so it seems like there's a substance almost for all these different points of exploration that you go into. And I mean, why do you think it is that we're so sort of culturally afraid of doing that?
I think we're afraid of that self-reflection. I think it's scary. I mean, it's scary to have to take that moment of, oh shit, what am I doing? And people are afraid of that to a large part. And it's just these programs that have built up that are easy to accept. And we have just a lot of momentum in that. I mean, people inherently trust what their doctor tells them to take, as far as if it comes in a little orange tube and it has some, has a prescription on it, like, okay, I'm going to take that. Not everybody, of course. But, and I don't think the doctors are ill-meaning, but the doctors have a couple studies funded by people whose motivation is to make money, and they're going off that data as they're trained to do. But maybe that's good for you, maybe it's not. And I think the time now, more people are realizing you got to really take a look at the whole picture and make some decisions for yourself as to what is going to benefit you the most. Go back to function. What is going to help me be the best I can be?
Yeah, and what's always interesting about the pharmaceutical, like you said, someone hands you a bottle of orange pills or an orange bottle of pills, and most of the pharmaceutical drugs, I mean, are coming from plant-based compounds. I mean, it's something like, I don't know if it's quite half, but a lot of them are derived from compounds that initially came from plants. So it's this sort of, funny way of roundabout looking at medicine that we end up with the same function that the plant initially was there for. We just extracted the one compound, localized it, and like put it on steroids basically, and that's why we don't really understand where a lot of these side effects are coming from.
Totally. Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think people really, you got to take a fresh look at things. And it's not just a self-diagnostic of your own body. Like if you're talking about expanding that out, take a self-diagnostic about the laws, take a self-diagnostic about the rules. It's like, what are the relationship rules? Oh, you're supposed to get married and this is what happens, and you sign these papers and this. Take a look at that. Maybe that works for you, maybe it doesn't. But don't just accept anything as, well, that's just the way it goes. Oh, I'm sick. Okay, I'm going to go to the doctor. He's going to do this because the doctors know best. Maybe, but take a look. Like, come in like an alien and say everything is up for rational, judgment. What is the best system? What's the best way to raise a kid? What's the best way to treat my health? What's the best way to tap into my highest potential? Take a look around like an alien and make some decisions. And I think you'll find that there's a different path than the norm.
Yeah, constantly having that kind of Socratic inquiry with everything in your life. Is this the best way to do this? So with all of your journeys behind your back, what would you say were or just considering all the consciousness technologies that you've engaged with, which ones have had the highest impact on you in terms of your personal journey, optimizing and flourishing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a hard-headed guy, so it took some of the major heavy hitters like ayahuasca to shake me a little bit. So I have to give a lot of credit to that medicine. Wachuma is another one. It comes from the San Pedro cactus. Wachuma taught me a lot about free will and fearlessness. Ayahuasca really connected me with my true self and helped me understand who I was at the deepest level and get me past many of my fears. Everything has played a role, and it's all been really valuable. But I was someone who needed to get, I couldn't do it with the feather of yoga and meditation. I needed to get hit with the proverbial baseball bat of these plant medicines and go, whoa, 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 whoa. And that's what it took for me. Doesn't mean that that's the path for everybody, but I needed that. And then the maintenance is all of these other technologies, yoga, floating, meditation, things like that. There's this really awesome, I was just at Summit Series, there was this really cool technology. It's called the Muse technology, which is a portable EEG band that goes around your head, and it's hooked up to this app that tracks your brainwave patterns. And so it can tell when you're in a meditative state or when your mind's wandering. And in your earphones, on the app, it's like a sunny day. And if you get distracted and those brainwaves, lose focus and you drop out of that state, storms will come in, clouds will come in, and winds, so you'll hear it. So it's like instant biofeedback because meditating. And I think that's another cool area that's going. It's technology helping to show you what a meditative state is as well. So not only are these plant medicine technologies, but actual technologies utilizing brainwaves is going to be another huge ally. And I'm all about function. And I think that's functionally another great way to look at it.
Yeah, the Muse is pretty cool. Being able to see what patterns of brainwaves you're at, and train yourself actually to certain patterns. I guess have you tried putting it on while you take Alpha Brain? See if you're in a heightened alpha state when you take it.
Yeah, well, we just got our clinical trial results back, and we used EEG on our patients, and it showed that people taking Alpha Brain versus placebo had increased peak alpha, improved theta beta ratio, improved reaction time. So we have all of this really cool clinical data, and now with something like the Muse, we can take that out to the masses and people can do their own tests. But that was a huge thing, as far as great accomplishments for Onnit, for the company, is getting that double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized clinical trial, Boston Center for Memory, like a flagship trial to show that plant substances, because our supplements are natural, can be as efficacious as any of these other chemical compounds. And so that was really cool to have that.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, congratulations on that.
Thank you, yeah.
And so when you think of technologies, when people hear consciousness technologies, like they're probably, most people are kind of like, well, what does that mean? Is that like the Muse headband sensor? Or so how do you define technology specifically? Because I do think of like the human body as the most elaborate, beautiful technology that we have access to. But most people don't necessarily think about it in that way. So how do you sort of define personally technology?
Yeah, the human body is amazing technology. I just saw a tweet that went out yesterday where Harvard is working on encoding information into DNA. And they were able to encode terabytes of information, or at least the foundation of that, into like a gram of DNA. So, amazing the technology that's available already in our body, and that is our body. And so consciousness technologies are just these tools that help unlock it. It's like running a new software system on your hardware. It can be like an update or an app or anything, use that kind of analogy where you add this plant medicine that works symbiotically with the body, like with something like DMT. We have receptors that are open and available, tryptamine receptors in our brain. That's like a lock, or like the female part of a unit, and then the other part comes in like a mesh, locks in, and creates this really incredibly powerful experience. So it's a lock and key, like any technology. It's the hardware and the software, and this is kind of like a software update.
Yeah, I dig it. And so when you talked a little bit in your talk about like responsible or use of psychedelic substances, or what does that mean to you? Not even responsible, but like the intention and the setting that you put into it, and the resultant sort of output consequences that you get out of it. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that mindset? Because most people, when they think of it, they think of, go to a festival, dance your balls off, and it's not necessarily, it's one way to use it, but how do you perceive the highest use in terms of human optimization?
Well, you have to set your intent on what you want it to do. These technologies are just that. They don't have a purpose. They're not good nor bad on their own. Ayahuasca is not, it's not a miracle healing thing on its own. It can be if used for that intention, and it's just a technology. It's like any other technology, like a laser. You can use it to burn somebody, or you can use it to perform surgery. And that's really what these things are. So making sure that your intent, knowing what you're doing it for, is important. And I'm not saying that, if you want to set the intent to take a few grams of mushrooms and enjoy a festival, that's okay. Just do it safely and make sure that you understand what that intent is. But if your intent is to really connect with a deeper source, your higher potential, what you're capable of doing, then you have to do it in a different way. You have to cultivate the environment, the intention, and the practice that's going to support that. And some of these technologies are really, it's playing with fire. These are really powerful instruments, and if not applied correctly, can have pretty dramatically bad results. Two of these in particular are iboga and kambo.
What was the second one?
Kambo, or Kambo, and it's this frog toxin that people use as a cleanse. I had an experience there where I went with a non-traditional practitioner, and I had my kind of psychonaut hat on. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna try it and just see what happens. I didn't really have an intent other than to just catalog what was going on. So mistake number one, didn't have a reason to do it. Mistake number two is I didn't properly vet the person who was administering it. And the result was that I got 2.5 times the initial dose that I should have, and went into full anaphylactic shock and almost died and was sick for weeks afterwards because of it. It's playing with fire. Same with iboga. Iboga is another really potent substance, great for, people coming off heroin addiction and opiate addictions, has amazing studies, and I had an amazingly powerful spiritual experience. But you step that dose up too high, or you don't provide the right environment, there's catastrophic results waiting around the corner. So understand that these are just forces, and you have to harness these forces in the right way, with the right guide, with the right intent, and in the right setting in order to maximize their benefit. There's no holy water. There's nothing that's only good. These are pure, neutral technologies, and it's what your intent with them that decides whether they're good or bad.
Right, and speaking of this setting, you mentioned earlier the legal setting of where we live also, and so what do you see as sort of the legal future for some of these substances? I mean, cannabis is being legalized throughout the U.S. for the most part, or it's looking like it will be. What do you see for the long term of using some of these substances for expanding human consciousness and medicinally?
It's one of the most exciting things to look forward to, because the train is on the tracks. It's too late now to stop this momentum. The more that they open it up, so cannabis is already on its way. I think there's a tipping point. I was talking to the director of NORML, which is the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Actually, I connected with her at Voice and Exit, and she's saying that once you get to 14 states legal, that's the tipping point at which it's going to become legalized nationally. That's what happened with alcohol. It's kind of like, of course it's the theory, but we're rapidly heading that way because more and more data is coming out. Economic data, health data, all of this positive data is coming out. It's too late to put that cat back in the bag. Sorry, game over. It's going to happen. So just hurry up and get it, get it on. MDMA, the clinical trials with PTSD are going incredibly well. And the way that the medical system works is once you start these clinical trials, as long as you continue proving positive data without, showing harm to individuals, it's going to be legalized as a drug. It's on the tracks. So MAPS.org is doing an amazing job with that. So that's on the tracks to be legalized as a medicine. Already the work being done with psilocybin by the Heffter Institute and Beckley Institute, these different groups, that's in process as far as showing efficacy in palliative care at the end of life and a variety of different treatment. So that's on course. And then you have ayahuasca, which could go one way or the other. It could take the medical route, but there's already some really strong inroads into religious use as well. And so that could become legalized as part of religious practices, because it becomes a weird kind of discriminatory spot that's very hard to defend if you say, okay, you guys can use this for your religion, but you can't use this for your religion. It's like, that gets weird, you know, so maybe there's some inroads and potential there. So a lot of positive things that are coming on. And I think our generation, as we get into positions of power, are going to be a lot more able to understand the scope. And I realize that these things have their risks, but the benefits, in the most part, far, far, far outweigh the risks.
And so let's imagine that most of these substances become legal in one fashion or another, through one channel or another. What sort of like things do you see popping up that would change the way that we interact with these substances? You know, let's imagine the U.S. If it's legalized here, let's say ayahuasca is legalized and MDMA for medical uses. Do you see like healing centers opening up that advocate and host
Absolutely.
Responsible use? What's your vision for that?
I think there would be a ton of individual practitioners. They'd have their Yelp reviews, they'd have their Google reviews, you'd have to take a look. There'd be some accreditation services that would pop up, and there'd be a host of great individual practitioners. And then there'd also be, in my utopic vision, there'd be these churches reimagined, you know, where it's Sunday and you want to have an opportunity to connect with Source. You know, you go to this beautifully designed indoor, outdoor facility where a variety of things are offered. Maybe there's a inspiring speech on consciousness that's mixed with, a psilocybin offering that comes before, and that's your church for that day. Or maybe it's a cannabis yoga situation that goes on that day. Or perhaps there's an evening ayahuasca session that's going to be happening where you're purging and going through these different aspects. I mean, that to me that's utopia, you know, just an opportunity for people to come in. You could meet with counselors, talk about what's going on with you and say, all right, maybe flotation is the best thing for you right now. It's like, all right, well, maybe this psilocybin inspirational nature hike is what's going to be best for you. Like, and just be able to dial in these modalities and really give people an opportunity to tap in. Because so many of our rituals now are just hollow, you know, they're empty. And I think we can bring back some real heart to that with the help of these medicines.
Yeah, I think you might have just invented a future profession right there of consciousness counseling. You know,
Sure.
I love it. Sure. It's like an urban shaman there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very cool. And so what do you think some of the implications might be? You know, if those sorts of entities and organs of society are out there and people are going to them, it becomes a little bit more normalized. What do you see as the implications? You know, from our standing point in this moment, now looking at the implications of that sort of social change.
To me, the most important thing that we have to do is affect consciousness. And I have a lot of admiration for the people who are making wells, providing food, you know, doing these kind of downstream efforts. But really, to me, the big problem is it's a consciousness problem. We have adequate resources and available technology that we can apply to fixing and helping a lot of situations. Now, granted, a lot of consciousness has to come to start to consciously bring life into the planet rather than just, you know, rampantly creating new lives based upon momentum or belief systems or whatever. I think that's another story. But for the most part, if we can alter consciousness, we'll alter the nature of the planet. And the environmental practices, the charitable contributions and practices, how we care for each other, the reformation of tribes where it's that kind of no person left behind concept, where you have a group of people that's responsible for the whole. I think all of those things become possible and viable again. And I think really I think that's the way we're heading. Obviously, there's some challenging areas, you know, that in the world, because we're all connected now in this global sense. So I'm incredibly optimistic in some regards, and I have no idea what the best way to, you know, bring consciousness to some of the people, you know, suffering in different areas in the Middle East or wherever. I mean, they're in all countries, in all places. But some places are very hard to penetrate, like North Korea. How do you get information to them, when they got the internet blocked? So I don't know all the answers to that, but I know that as consciousness improves, I see the future of the world looking a lot brighter, providing more opportunities for it to be that heaven on earth rather than a stop where we suffer for a while before we move on.
Yeah, and so what if someone's, I'm inspired by that vision. What would you recommend is sort of the first kind of practice you could implement to start, engaging in the world in that way?
The most powerful thing you can do is work on yourself, and I think too many times people are too eager to proselytize to others when really the work hasn't been done themselves. I remember I was talking to my parents about doing some kind of journey or experience for years, and they're like, yeah, whatever. And then one time I came right back from Peru and just showed up at their house. I didn't even talk about what happened there, but they could just see. They're like, oh, whoa. Like, I want a little piece of what he just went through, because he's beaming, from every pore of his being. And that made the biggest impression on anybody. So work on yourself. Get yourself in a state where you're truly fit to be of service to others, and then the actual part of being of service will come naturally.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And so real quick, what's the future of Onnit? What are we going to see from Onnit in the next 5 to 10 years?
I want Onnit to be the resource that can provide people with all the information on how to do that self-diagnostic with the body and how to make those changes start to happen. We're not going to get into the spiritual side of things with Onnit. That'll be left separately. But at least the physical diagnostic and some of the mental diagnostic, like, all right, what's going on? How can I improve this? What are my wrenches? Where's my screwdriver? Where's my oil? Where's my grease? Where's the new tires? Where's everything? I want Onnit to be that resource where they can just drop in, do the diagnostic, take a look around, and get that to a state where they have energy, they're out of pain, and then from there, we can work on the consciousness as well. But Onnit is the place where they can go and take care of that base level of the pyramid, the physical and mental side.
That's awesome, man. I'm excited about it.
Me too.
Well, thanks for your time, Aubrey. It was fun chatting with you.
Yeah, indeed. And thanks for having that awesome painting behind you. It's incredibly interesting.
Yeah. This was from Voice and Exit.
Oh.
We had everybody contributed to this painting, actually. Fernando Palomo is a painter who kind of did the outline of it, and then everybody came up and kind of contributed. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
We'll be doing that again this year, too.
Awesome, man.
New painting every year.
I like it. Well, thanks for doing what you do, man. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Aubrey.
All right. Take care.